Hi, I'm Ethan and I'm with my co-host Richard. This is a true crime podcast called Pastime Crime. In today's episode, we'll be talking about the doctor, the dentist, and the killer.
One day, early in June, a young woman named Brenda Delgado received an email from her ex-boyfriend, Ricky Penegua. The email was explaining that he needed to move on from the relationship, and this took Brenda by surprise. Brenda was 31 years old and was described as a charming, beautiful, and intelligent young woman. Ricky was 38 and graduated from Texas Southwestern University with a degree in ornithology. Brenda was originally from Mexico, and her parents decided they wanted a chance to better their lives. Brenda was the only girl out of 5 siblings.
Ricky ended up meeting Brenda in 2012, and they were living together only after 3 months. Besides a short breakup in 2015, Ricky decided to break up with Brenda. He moved on to another relationship and met a woman named Kendra Hatcher. She was 35 and a dentist and lived in Gables Park, which was a high-end apartment complex in uptown Dallas. She was described as obsessed with Ricky, and their relationship blossomed into a healthy start and to what appeared as a new leaf for Ricky.
That summer, Ricky and Kendra would treat themselves with fashionable restaurants and expensive vacations. They frequently posted pictures of themselves on social media of just having a great time. Then, just before a departure to another vacation, on September 2nd, 2015, Kendra Hatcher was shot on her way out of an apartment in a parking garage attempting to leave.
Uptown Dallas was awestruck of what just happened. No one ever expected such an innocent life with a perfect family to be taken. Friends and family of Kendra all over were shocked by the situation, and they donated flowers, pictures, posters with Kendra on them. When Brenda first heard of the killing, she reached out to Ricky and offered anything that Ricky would take. This was important that Brenda did this because she intended to cover up any suspicion that could have been aroused.
It was later discovered that Brenda had been stalking Ricky's personal life. She had been reading his texts, searching through his email, and even following him all over uptown Dallas. Reaching out to Ricky was a perfect counter for being so involved in his personal life. When Brenda found out Ricky was falling in love with Kendra, she hired a cannabis dealer and a struggling single mother to murder Kendra Hatcher.
When police arrived on the scene, they noticed that her handbag had been stolen. So they just assumed that it had been the result of a robbery. But later intel told them that it wasn't just this. It was shown that after Brenda had hired the dealer and the single mother, that through their texts they actually followed through with the plan. They murdered Kendra Hatcher before her flight to Cancun with Ricky.
Brenda's family refused to believe that she had anything to do with Kendra's killing. And that'll wrap us up for part one of the doctor, the dentist.
Hi, I'm Ethan and I'm with my co-host Richard. Today we're talking with Officer Hill about his experiences and our crime podcast. Mr. Hill, could you please introduce yourself?
My name is Officer Hill. I've been working here at the high school for about 8 years. Prior to that, I was New York State Trooper for about 30 years. I retired from there as an investigator.
So you're an officer here at the school. How did you get involved with the school?
After I retired, I was approached by the Steuben County Sheriff. There was an SRO that was here that needed some time off, so I was asked to fill in, and eventually it turned into a permanent position.
Who referred you?
The sheriff. Yeah, Sheriff Allard.
So have you had a lot of history in homicide, or?
Yeah. The last 7 years of my career with the state police, I was an investigator stationed at SP Horseheads. During that time, I investigated several.
So could you discuss a time where you had to testify in court using forensic evidence? in a homicide case?
Generally, my role was not in the forensic part of it. That's our crime scene technicians take care of the forensics. My role in testifying in court would be as to witness statements and interviews, things of that nature, interpersonal communications.
Okay. So did you use situational evidence to piece things together?
Yes.
Yeah.
How do you collaborate with other law enforcement agencies?
Generally, with the state police, we're a good-sized department. We're statewide, and as such, we have a lot of resources. State gives them a lot of money, and one of our big things to do is to share those resources with smaller departments. So generally, when there's a major case that's in the jurisdiction of a smaller department, they'll contact the state police for assistance, and we'll respond to that and give them anything that they need, really.
All right.
Is there like any instance where like just one memory comes to mind with working with another agency or?
Yeah, I've worked with Corning PD. I think it was 2015, maybe. There was a homicide on the South Side Hill.
Where I live.
Yeah, probably. Corner of Cedar and Fifth. Pine and Fifth. But yeah, anyway, the Corning PD had located a victim there, and they requested assistance from the state police. And we pretty much sent a team there, a crime scene unit, probably 8 investigators. And between all of us, we were able to come up with some suspects pretty quickly and make some arrests and get that case closed out.
How soon did you have to meet with the eyewitnesses, if there were any? Or
well, that depends on the case circumstances. Normally, with an eyewitness, you want to interview them as soon as possible, when everything's fresh in their mind, before they get a chance to collaborate with other people and possibly change their own recollection.
police department that night?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. Bring them to the station, interview.
Could you interview him at the scene?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Did you guys have body cameras?
No, investigators, we did not wear body cams. No. And at that time, body cams were just coming into play in law enforcement, so the state police didn't have them at that time.
Did you get a chance to look at the article?
I did. It was very interesting. It was an interesting case. I recalled, I think I saw the episode. It was either 48 Hours or Dateline. One of those shows did an episode on that, and I recall seeing that. Yeah, it was interesting. We've had similar cases. I mean, it makes for a good story, but in the end, somebody's dead, so it's not that great. But yeah, I thought they did a great job with their investigative techniques and the way they pulled it together. Do you think
it's common to have love or attraction to be the center of a homicide?
Absolutely, yeah. It's one of the big reasons for homicides. Crimes of passion, we call them. Jilted lovers. Somebody catches somebody cheating on them, whatever. Yeah, a lot of times that ends up in homicide, which is unfortunate.
Is there any could you provide an example of like a case where you had to like adapt to the investigation or certain circumstances that you couldn't foresee?
Yeah, we did it. We did a homicide out in Caton several years ago. Not that long ago, really. But it involved part of our job as a complete team. This was a joint adventure between the Sheriff's Department and the State Police. Part of the job I was assigned to was to locate video footage. So the actual crime scene was at a remote location. So we were trying to put together a timeline of when the person got there and when they left and the routes that they traveled. So we started out with, just what we thought, the most logical way to get there, and just started hitting doors and businesses and anywhere we see a camera, asked to look at footage for a certain time period, and eventually we were able to locate it, and we were able to track the vehicle going all the way out to the crime scene and coming back, and where they ended up in the city of Elmira. So it took a few days to do that, but it worked out pretty well. And that, combined with the rest of the team, everybody else's portion of that investigation, we were able to get 2 convictions out of that. Actually, 3 convictions.
What do you think are like important? What do you think important qualities for like a successful officer, like detective, is?
Well, number one, you got to have a lot of patience. You've got to be patient. You have to be insightful. You have to be empathetic, because a lot of the people that you're dealing with are victims, and you've got to be able to talk to them in such a way that they don't feel threatened, or almost comforting. You have to comfort them, and you have to be curious. Really, you got to want to know.
We talked about patience.
Mm-hmm.
What's the normal amount of time where you can say, okay, this case, like, we can see maybe a path where it can develop into something, but you don't have enough evidence?
Mm-hmm.
What's the time, I guess, limit where you would say, okay, let's shut this down?
For homicide in particular, there is no time limit, because there's no statute of limitations on that. You can always charge somebody. But generally, there's a show on TV, actually, it's called The First 48, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say 48 hours, but usually within a week, we're either done with the case, as in we've arrested somebody, or we're at a point where we're kind of stuck, and then it becomes less of a priority.
Okay. And you said you called those cases cold cases.
Cold cases, yeah. And cold cases can go on for years.
Have you ever had, I don't know how much experience you've had, but have you had a homicide case where you convict someone, arrest them, and then they have a trial even a year later where there's enough evidence to prove them innocent?
I have never experienced that, no.
Would you say it's common?
No, I would not say it's common. I'd say it happens.
Yeah.
The criminal justice system is not perfect. It never will be. And that does happen, and it's unfortunate, but no, I've never experienced it. And I don't think it happens as much as some people think it does.
Have you ever had several investigations going on simultaneously? And if you have, how do you prioritize and manage them all at the same time?
Yeah, we have been in that situation before. And basically, you have to triage them. You have to take the worst one and the most serious one, work on that first.
Okay, you don't get the easier, quote-unquote, easier ones out of the way and then get...
No, because generally if it's an easy case and you've got a suspect and they're not a threat to the community or whatever while you're investigating, then you can kind of put that on the back burner. But if it's somebody like, for example, let's just say an axe murderer, okay, going around killing people with axe, that's a case that's gonna be your priority.
Yeah. Ever made a mistake early in your career where you like, oh no, I'm not right for this job?
No, I never thought that, but I have made mistakes in my career. I'm the first one to admit that. And like I said, you just learn from them.
Yeah.
It changes your perspective a little when you make a mistake like that.
Yeah. Have you ever been under pressure, like and you had to make a very critical decision? Like very quickly? Yeah. That's an everyday thing in law enforcement. Yeah, it's something that you adapt to as an officer. And by the time I became an investigator, I had a lot of time on the job, and I was pretty adept at making split decisions. Yeah, you get used to doing that. And earlier in your career, you tend to make your mistakes, and you learn from them. So yeah.
What's the normal process of like getting evidence for a crime scene or going through an actual like step by step?
Well, generally with the crime scene, with evidence collection, we have a crime scene technicians that do that for us, but they don't go in until we have a warrant to search the scene. So generally, the first step is to establish that a crime's been committed, and then get a search warrant for the scene or whatever places you want to look that you have reason to believe something involved with this crime might be located.
Did law enforcement adapt quickly to getting search warrants for opening phones? and social media?
Yes, I think they did. Yeah.
It didn't take them time.
No. The state police, especially, we have our computer unit up in Canandaigua. Those guys are brilliant. They go to a school. I think the FBI teaches it. It's all, I won't say electronic warfare, but it's all electronic. How to get into this and how to get into that, and they provide us with computers and programs and everything. So, for example, everything on your cell phone right now, you've probably had stuff on your cell phone. You say, I don't want that, so you delete it. Well, trust me, it's still on there, and these guys will find it. Yeah. I've used them, several times in my investigations, and I've gotten a chance where they print out the report of the contents of the phone and they send it to me, and it's just amazing what's on there that you think might be gone, but it's still in there.
Yeah. How useful would you say that the online evidence is?
And again, same things that are on the phone. So there are always texts in that case that we read. They used a bunch of texts between the girl and her friend or whoever it was, saying, meet me here, he's not here, whatever it was. Stuff like that. Yeah, it's very useful.
What are some strategies you use to get information from people who are really reluctant to share, witnesses or suspects?
Well, generally the only people that are reluctant to share are suspects. Witnesses sometimes are, but that.
They don't want other people getting hurt.
Well, they may be a friend or something like that, or they may be gang member that's in the same gang and are going to testify against their buddy, whatever. But that all it comes down to interview skills, interpersonal relationship skills, how well you can talk to somebody. And I became very adept at that. We used to call it getting them to talk. I became pretty adept at that and was able to get some pretty good confessions. Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot of interpersonal skills needed for that job. So, got to be able to get up close and personal.
Well, that's the first part of the Doctor, the Dentist, and the Killer. And there's tons more details, tons more things that happen later on in the story, but we'll keep that for next time. So be sure to tune into the next episode when it comes out. We also had Officer Hill on today, and I thought his insight as a law enforcement detective was really, really interesting. And you could tell that he had a really good understanding of how they work, which I thought was interesting as well. Overall, Ethan, what did you think about the case?
Mr. Hill gave a very good interpretation of his opinion as an officer. And he also showed that he understood what was going on. He is a very smart person. I definitely appreciate him as a person and what he does around our school. He's very helpful when it comes, and then I also enjoyed that story. We should give credit to Texas Monthly for helping us, because that's where we have found our information. Mr. Hill has had over 30 years on the job and has given a very, very amazing understanding and done his best to help us.
About the case, I really thought that the trope of lovers getting back at who they used to be with is really well, because we're going to get to this later in a few other episodes, but the murderer, Brenda Delgado, had a very good background and a really nice family. But when it comes to something like love, it doesn't matter how well you were raised. It can really change someone's life and can even cause them to become violent. I thought that was interesting about the case. I also thought that she hired two people, not even qualified for this job, a marijuana dealer and a single mother. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Just two people who are in place in need of money, and I think that they were really sloppy about it. I don't know why they texted. They should have probably met in person. I don't know. They really were just idiotic about it. Background really doesn't mean anything when it comes to love. It's just about who you care about. And
yeah, well said.